Hey folks, welcome back to the podcast. Today's episode is a repeat guest, Phil Micans. It's not a repeat episode, however. This is a new episode with Phil Micans. He was my guest, episode 47, which was one of the first episodes I published on the bioregulator peptides, which, as many of you know, if you've been listening to this podcast, I'm absolutely fascinated with and have now been working with myself and with my clients for well over a year. Phil has a background in pharmacy, biochemistry, and nutrition. He's got a keen interest in preventative and regenerative medicine. That would be the understatement of the day. He's currently the editor of the Aging Matters magazine and co-editor of the Lifespan Journal. He is putting on an event at the end of September 30th to October 2nd in London, called the Antiaging Summit. And I'm telling you guys, this is going to be an amazing event. I'm definitely going to be there. A lot of the doctors that I know and talk to are going to be there as well. A lot of other followers. It's going to be a lot of regenerative medicine, but some of the featured speakers include Professor Vladimir Kavinson himself, as well as Dr. Bill Lawrence and a bunch of others. If you go to the website, profound-health-summit.com, you will see a list of the speakers, and you could also enjoy the early bird rate, which is in place until June 1st. So you have a couple weeks to get in on that. And also, if you enter promo code WINE, you will get gifted a ticket to the Friday night VIP reception, which is where all the speakers are going to be and all of the guests who register early. So if you happen to buy one of those tickets, then let me know, because we can raise a glass together. Anyway, back to the episode. We talk about bioregulators, and we do talk about some of the topics that some of these incredible speakers are going to be speaking about. So there's a little bit of a review at the beginning about bioregulators, but it's not too long. And then we launch into some new information, and some of it that Phil just got maybe a week before we recorded. So there's some interesting stuff in here. I hope that you enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed recording it with Phil. He's always good for a laugh and a good joke. If you decide you'd like to shop for some bioregulators yourself, you can go to his website, profound-health.com. And if it's your first order of bioregulator peptides, you can use discount code longevity15 and save 15% off your first purchase. If you get value from this episode, please make sure that you share it with your friends, your family, your networks, and that you leave us a review, because of course this is how we get found, and this is ultimately how we get to reach more people just like you. So thank you so much for being here. Totally appreciate you guys, and enjoy the episode. Hey folks, just a little bit of housekeeping before we launch into the episode. Please remember that all of the information provided in these podcasts is for information purposes only. We are never offering treatments, cures, whatever, for any kind of disease or medical condition. Anything you hear about here is going to be intriguing. There's some research around it, but make sure that you check with your medical provider before you go off and do any of this stuff for yourself. All right. So, enjoy the episode. And also, if you're looking to connect with me for any reason, with your comments, questions, whatever it may be, you can reach me through my website, which is natnidham.com, or you can find me on Facebook in the Optimizing Superhuman Performance group, or on MeWe in the Biohacking Superhuman Performance group. And of course, you can also follow me on Instagram, which is at Natalie Nidham. Natalie is with an H between the T and the A, the second A. So thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you guys. Enjoy the episode. Phil Micans, it is a pleasure to have you here today. Again, it's been a year. I can't believe it's been a year. Welcome back.
Thank you, Natalie. And I totally agree with you. Where does all the time go? And that's why we must live longer.
Yes, correct. Exactly. So that we can get more out of life, right? So guys, if you didn't catch our first episode, it was episode 47 of the podcast. And it was part of the first series of podcasts that I put out there on this fascinating topic of bioregulator peptides. And so Phil, really briefly, I mean, people can go back and listen to 47 if they want to get the deep lowdown on you, but maybe you can talk a little bit about you and your company, because I think you're doing more about making these bioregulators available to us than many other people are. So.
Well, thank you very much, Natalie. I mean, basically, I helped to form an organization that we call IAS, or International Anti-Aging Systems, to give it its full name. And we did that nearly 30 years ago now. And it was always, I mean, we had that word anti-aging 30 years ago, which was pretty well unknown then. And why? Because really, we were fascinated with preventative and now regenerative medicine.
Mhm.
And so, through various means, we've done our best to highlight what goes on around the world. So we've, through our website, antiagingsystems.com, or through our magazine, which can be downloaded free as well, called Aging Matters, agingmatters.com. We've tried to put these things out. And without trying to blow my own trumpet, we're quite high level.
Mhm.
We're quasi-medical, if we can say that, I suppose. And we always give references. So if we make these statements and say, this researcher's doing this clinician's doing that, that country is now doing this, we put those references in. And over the years, we've had what I would call real wow factors. That
Mhm.
when people hear this story for the first time, they say, oh, it's almost too unbelievable. And I think that the peptide bioregulators fall into that category. And I learned about them, oh God, I can't even think how far back it was now. It was at least 8 or 9 years ago, when I had the pleasure of listening to Professor Kavinson lecture in Istanbul. And that lecture was one of the few lectures that froze me to the spot,
Yeah.
because as we now know, they're gene switches.
Mhm.
They're substances found in different foods that are gene switches. And I helped to write a book, a scientific book, along with Professor Kavinson and another professor, which kind of in the title sums it up, which is Peptides in the Epigenetic Control of Aging.
This one.
Oh, thank you. That's the one. And I'll sign that for you next time. And so, that really says it in a nutshell. And of course, that has huge implications that manifest off in all kinds of directions. And we have in the previous 47, we've probably gone back and we've touched on how they're being used in different Eastern Bloc countries to make all kinds of treatments.
Yeah, and I think we could even touch on that a little bit. I mean, I know we have a couple of new topics, but for people who don't know, for maybe a new listener to the podcast who doesn't know what a bioregulator peptide is, and I think that as an epigenetic factor is the best way to describe these peptides, right? Because how many things can you find that actually will bind to DNA, will upregulate the production of proteins? It's a pretty amazing thing. Like the other peptides we talk about are signaling molecules. They bind to receptors on the surface of the cell. They initiate cascades. These are quite different. So, in the spirit of doing a brief recap on that first episode, in case people don't want to go back and listen to it, maybe you can talk a little bit about these bioregulators and what they're all about. And we could talk about natural versus synthetic. I mean, there's so many different topics in this area.
There is. And of course, there's a gazillion peptides out there, right? And peptides, of course, are made of amino acids, and there's plenty of them as well. And, we go down the chain and they become proteins and they become hormones and so on and so forth. They're all amino acids at the end of the day. But there's a key word in when we say bioregulators.
Mm-hmm.
And not every peptide can call itself a bioregulator. And I use a slightly different connection here. A lot of people today, they talk about nootropics, the so-called smart drugs, but it's an abuse of the word. I won't bore you with the details, but it was a guy called Dr. Gijera in Belgium in the 60s who defined what nootropic meant, and it's 6 criteria. But today it's become anything that kind of helps memory and cognition, but it's a kind of bastardization of what the original meaning was. In a similar way, the word bioregulator actually has a meaning, or has 2 meanings, really, fundamentally. First of all, it means that these peptides are short-chain amino acids, made up of short chains of amino acids, specifically 2, 3, or 4.
Yep.
Now, anybody that knows about peptides will get, wow, that's very, very small indeed. In fact, a two peptide chain is called a dipeptide. But so that's one criteria. But there are short chains of amino acids in that category that we don't currently quantify as bioregulators. So what does the second part of the terminology? The second part of the terminology is that these short chains have been proven through various experiments to act as gene switches. Now, as my old mentor, Dr. Wardeen, would say, and I can hear him saying it now, it doesn't mean to say, Phil, that there aren't other short chains of amino acids that aren't also bioregulators. We just haven't discovered them yet. And that's perfectly true. But like all science, we have to go with what we know.
I have a question for you. There is a 3 amino acid peptide that has been studied by, I can't remember which university in the US, that influences over 1,000 genes.
Wow.
It's GHK. Are you familiar with GHK?
I'm not familiar with it, although I have heard of it.
Yeah, so it's interesting because it's a 3 amino acid. Very often it's GHKCU. It's because it needs copper to activate. And I've always wondered that if GHK had been discovered by Professor Kevinson instead of by Dr. Lauren Pickard, who is the gentleman in the 1970s who discovered GHK, if GHK might not be classified as
it could be. It could be. And I think what we do is go and study it for a while and see if it can, and I could even put it to Professor Cavinson and he may bless it and it may
well, I think it's on his radar. I know that somebody once said to me that Professor Cavinson either said or muttered. I kind of wish I would have discovered this one myself.
1,000 is a heck of a lot, though.
Yeah. So this was this, and they, I mean, the way they described it was like you could imagine this thing running up and down the chain, flipping genes one way or the other. You know, like a little little.
That's amazing. I wonder. See, I've got a book up there above my shelf up there of the genes that the actual genes that the different bioregulators have affinity for, and as to the best of my memory at the moment, it is late at night here in the UK. The best of my memory is I don't remember any of these 21 bioregulators that are identified as affecting more than 6 or 8 genes.
Yeah, no, look, it's really interesting to me too. So anyway, maybe it's a project to investigate another time. I apologize. I interrupted you. I've always wondered about
sharing what it's all about.
Yeah, no, I've always wondered about GHK because, you know, it fulfills the criteria of 3 amino acids. It definitely acts on DNA, so it's definitely an epigenetic factor.
You see, I don't know of its safety factor. One thing we can say about these 21 bioregulators, when used orally, at least, anyway, especially when used orally, is their safety factor is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it could be because they're so specific. And the word bioregulator, why did they come up with that? You know, it's a slightly strange name. Well, let's take an assumption. Let's talk about the thyroid as an example. If we had a poor functioning thyroid, we may take a thyroid medication. We may take a synthetic T3 or T4, or we might even use the natural porcine thyroids that are out there on the market. And we would no doubt see an elevation in our thyroid level. But we'd also know that we'd have to monitor ourselves quite closely, because you wouldn't want to push your thyroid into a hyperthyroid situation and have all kinds of damaging consequences. Here's the weird thing about these peptides. They either switch a gene off or they silence it. They either silence a gene or switch a gene on. There's no middle ground. It's not a very good analogy, but it's a bit like leaving the office and not remembering if you left the light on or not, and you phone the security guard, and he goes and looks at well, the light is on or the light is off. There's no middle ground.
Correct.
And so what's fascinating about these bioregulators, and don't forget there are over 30 years of studies to go back on, and they estimate used in over 1 million people. They can't find any serious side effects. And here's why. If you had that poor thyroid, let's go back to that again, and you took the thyroid peptide and it activated the gene so that your thyroid gland started producing more thyroid, there would come a point where it would stop. You cannot go to an excess. It keeps it in the middle ground. And conversely, and weirdly, if you were hyperthyroid in the first place and you took the thyroid peptide, it would switch off and bring you down. It puts you within this operating level. A lot of people have real difficulty getting their head around that.
Yeah. Well, they're
there's nothing else
modulators.
like it. There's nothing else like it.
Yeah, no, it's, although I have to tell you that in the last year of people in my community, like, as you know, I have this fairly large Facebook group. I have come across people on occasion who are so sensitive to substances that they swear up, down, and sideways that some bioregulators for them are too much. It's really interesting. Like, it almost like, who knows if it's that, like, and so in some cases they have to open up a capsule and they have to start with half a capsule.
Really?
Yeah.
I would wonder two things. I would question two things. Do these people have any allergies? And the only reason I say that is there are other ingredients in the capsules, the fillers and so on. If they have an allergy to those, it's rare, but it does happen. That would be one question. And also, and probably unlikely, but we should mention it, if they have any autoimmunity issues.
Sure. Well, and a lot of them do.
Well, recently, and this is recent for me, I've been told by some of the people in the Institute that it would be better for them to actually take the synthetic peptides rather than the natural peptides.
Really? For autoimmune issues?
For autoimmune issues, yeah.
That's so interesting. And did they tell you why?
I haven't got any deep detail. It was literally me writing an email about what do you think of this, and then coming back and saying, well, we do that.
Wow. Okay. Well, so for next episode, we need to dig into this, Phil, because this is new information. This is really interesting.
That is hot off the press. I only got that this week, actually.
Breaking news right here, folks. You heard it here first. So
I've got to admit that that's one of the bugbears we have. Because these are very different languages, they're not in English. There is still so much to be translated, and that's how we're going to get hold of this eventually. And of course, it is coming through, but it's taking time.
Well, even in the synthetic bioregulator dosages, there's been a lot of confusion over time, and it's come to light in the not too distant past that there's a belief out there that the original texts were not properly translated in terms of the dosages for the synthetic bioregulators. And because when we use, let's say, epitalon as the oral bioregulator, like the ones that are sold on your site, not the sublingual, but the capsules.
Yes.
I think you're looking, it says on the box that it's either 10 or 20 milligrams of bioregulator.
Yeah.
When you're doing the synthetic, apparently the dosage should be 100 micrograms, and people have been running around dosing 10 milligrams a day of the synthetic.
Oh, I'd have to go and double check that. There is a bit confusing on the original labeled boxes. These are the boxes that are not in English.
Right.
And what they say, and it's right there on the front of the box, it says 20 milligrams.
Yeah.
Now, it would be very easy to presume that each capsule is 20 milligrams, but it isn't. Because what they're referring to is a serving size. And the capsules are 10 milligrams, but you take 2 of them.
Right.
Now, on the English packaging, which is the products that we refer to as nature's marvels, we won't do that. Because that's not what we do in the West.
Yeah. We're more specific.
50 capsules, 10 milligrams.
Yeah.
And then on the back, take 2 a day.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I think that's where some of the confusion is probably coming from. I'll have to go back and double check on the synthetics. I can tell you a side story to the synthetic that may interest you. And that is that in the more, how should we call it, serious cases, when they've been used for various treatment protocols, and I'm talking now of the orals, I'm not talking about injections, they often start with the synthetics, and later they change to the naturals. Now, I questioned that and I said, odd, why would you do that? And the reply was, because for some reason, the synthetics act more quickly, but the naturals have longer term effects.
Yeah.
Yep. The other thing I would also say at this point is there are far more studies, I'm talking about human studies now, not in vitro or stuff like that. There are far more studies on the naturals than there are on the synthetics.
Interesting. Okay.
Well, I do think we talked about this a little bit last year, and I had put forward the thought that possibly the orals not only have the peptide in them, but they have some cofactors that get extracted along with the peptide,
absolutely,
right?
Totally go along with that. It's a bit like when you read these studies, you see a newspaper article and it says vitamin E fails, or whatever. And then you drill down into it and you actually find out that they were using a synthetic, almost invariably were using a synthetic, and it wasn't the case with the naturals.
Yeah.
And I think the reason is exactly what you just said.
Yeah. Well, and because of course vitamin E is it's 8 tocopherols, and quite often they'll use 1 tocopherol, right? So you're missing, and Mother Nature doesn't like it when we mess with her stuff.
Absolutely. And this is, of course, the fundamental problem with drug trials, because they want to find one molecule that will do that or that. And yet we know that if they use things in combination, the benefits would be far greater.
Absolutely. I think that's part of what's happening in the CBD industry. Like when you talk to people who use the whole hemp plant, and the results they get, and then you look at the trials of the drug companies who are trying to extract little bits and pieces to turn it into something that they can patent, and they can't reproduce, right? And they're missing all these other cofactors, and it's really annoying the daylights out of them.
There is a drug on the market called aglomelatine.
Yeah.
Guess what it is? It's an extract of melatonin.
Oh, you're kidding.
No, I'm not. No. It doesn't work quite as well, and it's a lot more expensive, and it has some side effects. But other than that, it's fantastic.
But it's patented.
Yeah. Patented, exactly.
Somebody's making money.
I've got a friend of mine who's really big into the whole CBD area, and he tells me lots of stuff about the terpenes and and it's like you say, as soon as you start detouring, but as you say, if they create something that never existed before in nature, then of course you can have a patent.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, so anyway, so it's interesting. And on that line with the bioregulators, I think if we were to, because there's, and I don't know if you're familiar with these companies that have Cytomax, Cytogen, and Cytomin or something. And the Cytomin is the cheapest, least refined of the, so it's almost like a desiccated lip. Or
I am familiar with this, Nathalie. The trouble with this game is, and it's true of nutrition, pharmacology, everything, there are the most ludicrous names for everything. And it's like learning a new language.
Oh yeah.
And then there's all these subdivisions. And unfortunately, with these peptides, I don't think it was very well thought through at the beginning. And they started giving different names. So basically what you've got is cytogens are the synthetics.
Okay.
And then cytomaxes are the naturals. Okay. So that's a subdivision within itself. And unfortunately, when it comes to brand names, it gets even worse.
Oh God, it's a nightmare.
Oh my God. If it's a capsule, it's got that name. If it's a sublingual, it's got that name. Oh my God. If it goes on and on. So when I talk about them, I try to refer to the back. So it's a pineal peptide, it's a thymus peptide. Otherwise, I'm afraid people are going to learn a lot of gobbledygook.
Well, somebody once said to me, it's kind of like going to the IKEA of the drugstores. With all the, with the Ventfort and the Stemacort and the Adrenocort, but then there's another name, and it's it's a little overwhelming. I actually have this idea. I've just started creating it. I need to get it made up by a graphic designer, but I have a table that I've made up with the different names of each bioregulator.
Good idea. That's a good idea.
Just
Very
like
helpful.
it's a little map for people.
But you know what? You know what, Natalie? I've got to say this. I hope people will like this comment. That is what is exciting about this field. It is still so new that we all make a little bit of an impact on it. We can all contribute and add and change. You know, so many things in this world are set in stone because they were done 100 years ago. This is an emerging technology, and we can all have. So that idea of yours is great, because I can't think of anybody at the moment who's done that. So
well, by the time this comes out, it'll be ready. So
terrific.
It'll be ready. Okay. So synthetics versus natural, we now know. So we've dropped a new little bomb on us that people with autoimmune issues may do better with the synthetics, at least initially, than the oral bioregulators. And maybe it's simply that it's a simpler compound. It's a more singular action, if you will, on whatever we're affecting.
It's less likely to have an allergic reaction. I would only advocate it for people with autoimmunity. I don't think I know there are people out there who have severe allergic reactions, but they are rare. I've known a couple, and I think it does depend on a number of factors. And the other factor, of course, is how toxic is the patient.
Right.
I've had numerous things over I do remember nothing to do with bioregulators, I'm afraid, on this particular occasion, but I remember one lady who had a session on a PMF machine and just broke out into this most violent rash.
Interesting.
Within because she was so toxic, and the cells were having this first opportunity in God knows how long to start dumping into blood. So but we're talking about people with quite big problems, of course.
Sure. Well, and that's your classic Herx reaction, right? So
exactly.
Yeah, I'm sure she walked out of there saying, seriously, you told me I was going to feel better. I feel possibly worse than I ever have.
In those people, it takes time.
Yeah.
They have to go through some of that. And they probably haven't realized it may have taken them 10 years to get to that position.
Or longer. So you bring up time. And I think maybe we could explore that a little bit, because very often I will get emails from people saying, oh yeah, I tried that thyroid bioregulator. It didn't work. It didn't do anything for me. And, it pains me to hear this quite often, because I think it bears mentioning that let's think about what's happening when we're using a bioregulator, and that this is not a 24-hour process.
No, exactly.
That this is going to take time. And so are you aware of any kind of guidelines or estimates in terms of how long might it take for someone to, like, the only one I would say, I've just interrupted myself, but the only one that I would say is an exception to this is sometimes epitalon or the pineal bioregulator. People will notice that their sleep improves very early quite quickly. But the rest of them, people kind of take them and, after a week or two, they're like, so I don't feel anything. Am I supposed to keep doing this? So maybe if you might want to talk to us a little bit about the fact that it takes some time.
Having been a pharmacist for many years, it almost comes back to a general question, which we can apply to many, many things. And that is, what is the patient's expectations? What are they thinking it's going to do? Where do they, let's be honest, we're taking these things because we perceive an issue and we want to improve it, whatever it might be. And so where do they want to go?
Yeah.
In other words. Secondly, apart from, having this, I'm going to lose my train of thought. It's terrible, isn't it? So secondly, what testing are they doing? Because there are some people who are brilliant at of course, if you're doing blood work or you're doing some sort of physical measurement, heat measurement, I mean, thyroid, you measure with a heat, right? It's quite simple to do.
Yeah, your first AM body temperature.
Exactly. That's a really neat way to measure thyroid. So are they doing anything like that? If they're actually got some sort of record oh, I did my blood work 3 months ago, I've done it. Telomeres, a classic one, of course. How would you know your telomeres are longer?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then of course there's that kind of, how should we call it, slightly more esoteric world where, yeah, I've got more energy, I think. I'm sleeping more, I think. So, and sometimes I would almost go, if you want to go down that route, there's nothing wrong with that. Some people are just better at feeling changes in themselves than others. The classic way, of course, is to ask somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Doctors used to always say that's how, if men had erectile dysfunction problems, I always wanted the wife in there at the same time, because I'd say to the man, are you suffering with any ED? Oh, no. And the wife's going, yes. So that's one of the challenges. One of the challenges is it true? And they haven't noticed these differences. Then we come down to, let's assume we're over that hurdle. Then we come down to, how often are they taking it?
Mm-hmm.
Have they been pretty good at staying on the regimen? Some people, oh, I didn't take it last week, but I did this week.
Yeah.
That's not really good enough. There are some guidelines on how to use these bioregulators. And then lastly, you come to a time, let's assume that that's correct and that's been held. I have a general rule of thumb, and I find that it does work in the majority of cases. If we do the old 80-20 rule, 80% of people, we can say this is true. My answer is 3 months.
Yeah. And so is it 3 months at 10 days a month, or do you kick people off with a 30-day induction and then 10 days a month after that?
Average person, and I know none of the people watching this are average.
Yeah, well, none of this is personalized advice here, guys. There's no medical advice, none of this. We're talking about a supplement here.
Exactly. So, the general rule, again, back to the 80-20 rule, is we start with what we refer to as the intensive course. And the intensive course is 2 capsules a day for 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
That's 60 capsules. And hey presto, they are sold in the larger packs of 60 capsules.
Yep.
There is a super intensive course, which is 2 capsules twice a day. But honestly, unless you've got a medical condition, I wouldn't go there. Okay. So once you've done your 60 capsules in a month, now, and again, it will depend on the need, but as a golden rule, I would say you want to take 2 capsules a day for 10 days each month. So now we're down to 20 capsules a month.
Yep.
Okay. Now, after a period of time, and again, it depends on the need and what your aims and goals are, but there could well come a moment where there will be improvements will be seen. And because these are not hormones, because these are not things that have to be put into the body every single day, because they're technically messengers that are telling genes to activate or to silence, general rule of thumb is you can reduce it to as little as every 3 months. So that's 20. So it's back to 2 capsules a day, 10 days, and that would be every 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And I would call that the maintenance dose. Now, I have heard of people going lower than that. If you were a very fit person and you really just wanted this as the insurance, I think you could go to as little as every 6 months.
Yeah, I tend to say that under 40, unless there's something going on, if you're just kind of hedging your bets and shoring up your defenses, as it were.
Yeah. Good point. That's a very good point. But personally, if we're over 50 or whatever, we're on that average decline curve of aging. We don't like it. We want to be on the optimal if we can. I would say don't go below every 3 months.
Yeah.
But here's the good news. From a cost perspective,
it's fabulous.
Taking a box every 3 months, and it's not so inconvenient, right? Because I'm sure all of us who are into this seriously, there's quite a few supplements we all take every morning, every afternoon, or perhaps every evening. And it does get a bit laborious. Oh, 2 of these and 3 of those and 1 of these. Oh, and rub this on. You know, it does get laborious. I know that. I can be lazy like the next person. So, so at least with these peptides, it doesn't have to be so frequent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's a great point. And I also, the point about, you know, are you just trying to maintain? Are you trying to shore up your defenses? Or, you know, is your pancreas not working the way you would like it to be working? So it's going to take some time to hopefully, you know, and I think the other concept in the bioregulators that's really important for people to get their heads around is also to use them in stacks. And I know we talked about this in our first episode. You know, there's the core triad, if we will.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And I always, the way I think of it also, if somebody's telling me, well, you know, I would love to support my pancreas for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I tend to go with a more, I look at all the other organs that are involved in this. And,
absolutely.
You know,
absolutely. If you looked at it from an endocrine point of view, you know, like the great books that Thierry Hertog writes, for example, you know, you see that they're not in isolation. If there's a pancreatic problem, you know, you may benefit from supporting your adrenals, or, you know, and of course, ladies in menopause, you know, it's not really good enough to just say, take some estrogen and progesterone. It's not quite that simple. You know, there are other adrenal hormones like DHEA, for example, and of course you get, once you bring a few things in combination, you get the whole. There are actually protocols. I did an interview with Professor Cameron some time ago now, and we did list a number of conditions, and he recommended 3 peptides for each of them. So, and there was one peptide that came up in order.
Yeah.
And that was the blood vessel
peptide.
And when you think about it, it's not really rocket science, because if you are improving your blood flow in your body, what isn't it going to help? If it's delivering more nutrition and taking away more toxins at any cell, it's going to improve. So that was the one that came up again and again.
Yeah, no, for sure. I noticed that, and that may or may not be part of the book that I was waving around earlier. So, okay, so let's touch a little bit. We have a couple more topics to go through. One that I wanted to touch on is on your website, Profound Health in the Store. There's the appearance now of sublingual peptides that we haven't seen as much of in the past. And so this is basically, these are the synthetic peptides that are being offered in a different form.
That's correct. That's correct. The synthetic peptides, as we've already alluded to, potential benefits with them, and they are cheaper as well. Let's put that out there as well. But there are only 6 of them. They're not 21 of them, so they're slightly limited in a number, but there's still some important ones amongst them. And yes, they are available. In fact, do you mind if I stand up?
No, please do.
Sorry about this. I've got some here.
Look at you.
On my shelf. So here we have, can you see that? There's an example.
Yeah.
And then this is the bottle inside. You see?
Right, it's a cube. It's like, it looks like a tube almost.
It is a tube. It is a tube. There it is. There's a tube. And of course it has drops of liquid, which you put under the tongue. And I can tell you, there's no discernible taste or smell.
It's like a homeopathic almost. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of. So then the question, of course, becomes, why would you want to use a sublingual as opposed to an oral? The classic, of course, is that sublingual anything is better absorbed.
Yeah.
By the way, these are slightly more expensive than the capsules, but there isn't much in it. So that's one. The other one, although this may not reach out to anybody watching this, but it is something we used to mention, people who have difficulty swallowing for any reason are not going to be troubled by this. So that, whether or not that's an issue, I don't know.
I also think for people who are vegetarian, like vegans, people who are very, they're very committed.
they
not
ask
using
about their
yeah, very committed to not using animal products. I think that's also where the synthetics come in, because it gives them
very
access to the bioregulators. Granted, not with
on
all the
that
cofactors.
no, I do get that. There is a point, if I may just make it slightly left field, but I think possibly interesting. Quite often, when you talk about the naturals, and of course it is a very small amount. You know, we're talking about the bovine extract of pineal or retina or whatever it is. I'm not knocking it. If you're vegetarian, you're vegan, that's fine. It's not an issue. But they are very small amounts. But a question that comes up occasionally is, will I get mad cow disease?
Yeah, prions. Yeah.
Prions. And there's absolutely no chance of it on a number of levels. But firstly, the way that the animals are raised and all the rest of it. But the actual peptides themselves, the molecules are subdalton. They're very, very small, and it's a filtration process. So no prions can exist in the material when it finally comes to be used. Not that they would accept a diseased animal into the process anyway. But I'm just making that point. You know, the chance is so infinitesimally small. It really is zero.
Okay, great. Well, that's a good point to make. Okay, so we've covered all these different topics. So now let's get to a couple. We have 3 more topics to cover, and then one last one at the end. And the first one was, you were telling me before the podcast that there are 2 doctors in the US that are treating an interesting condition and getting some really good results with, and I'm sure it's as part of a greater protocol, but there's a bioregulator that seems to be standing out for them in this condition. And maybe you'd like to share some of that.
Yeah, I was quite shocked, actually. One lady doctor gave me a call one day, and she was really ecstatic with the information. She was kind of gobsmacked, I suppose. And she had a number of Alzheimer's patients, and she's been giving them the brain peptide, or solutin, which technically is a CNS, a central nervous system peptide. And I think she was even surprised, because she said that after a month, she was getting statistical changes in the interactions and all those various means. So this is exciting. Now, I can't at the moment point to the reasoning why that would be. There's all the classic reasons that we could think of in how to improve an Alzheimer's patient, whether removing toxic plaques or raising their acetylcholine levels, or there's various ways we could think about it. And at the moment, I can't tell you the actual pharmacology behind it, but the proof is kind of in the pudding, right? You've got a doctor, got patients, she's added this to their regimen, and suddenly within a few weeks, they're seeing visible improvements.
Wow.
So I think that's exciting. And I hope to hear more of that. But I've had another doctor who's also confirmed that he sees improvement in some of his patients as well.
That's really
and I tell you that, I like funny stories, Nathalie.
Okay. Shoot.
So people then say, oh, Phil, you can't say on the basis of 4, 5, 6 people that this is real, and it's too small a number. And I'll say, well, yeah, you're probably right, but we have to look for clues. Except that Dr. Alzheimer proposed the theory of Alzheimer's on 2 patients.
There you go.
And was outdone by Dr. Parkinson, who presented it on 1. But there we go. We won't go there.
So do you think that, so I'm sure there's people listening to this, and maybe themselves or their loved ones is suffering from Alzheimer's or has gotten a horrible diagnosis. If they wanted, do you think these 2 doctors at some point will go public with this? Like, would they publish a paper, or if somebody really wanted to find them, could they call you, and might you share their information? Or
we could try reaching out to them and ask them that. Honestly, I don't know the answer.
That would be
that. Also, I want to talk to them about other peptides they're using, because, of course, I had this conversation with them about Cavinson's interview, and I can't remember now whether they were also incorporating the blood vessel peptide or not.
I bet you they were.
Yes. Well, maybe I can't remember now, to be honest. It was a few months ago. But in my opinion, and it's not just my opinion, lots of other docs I've worked with, we could say that all the dementias are affected by on a vascular level.
Of course.
So, but no, I'll have to look into it. I'll reach out to them and see what they want to say.
Yeah, no, I think that would be quite fascinating, right? I mean, even though it's preliminary, it's small, that's where we begin. As you said, we lose. And so then there was another condition that seems to have become the bane of everybody's existence, or many people's existence over the last 2 years. And that is a very amorphous condition that people are being left with ongoing symptoms and fatigue and whatnot after having contracted COVID, right? So our virus of the of the last couple of years that's made a mess of things.
I wanted to say to you, what's that? I've never heard of it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I think it'd be hard pressed to find a human being on the face of the planet that would question that right now. Whatever it is that you think about it. Yeah. So, but you were saying that, again, as part of a greater protocol, no doubt there's other pieces to this protocol, but there's a particular bioregulator that they seem to be finding that they're having some, it's not a surprise, really.
There's a couple of docs. One guy I know very well, known him many years, and he's a British doctor, and they're using the thymus peptide. And that may not be entirely surprising because, of course, what does the thymus do? It improves immunity, it's going to improve white blood cell counts, all sorts of nice things are going to happen. And what are the 13 thymic hormones? Oh, they're peptides. Oh, that's interesting, isn't it?
What a surprise.
Yeah, right. And I could go back to original German studies that used various thymic peptides and had some lovely effects like reducing osteoarthritis, inflammation, and all sorts of other things. But we're talking about COVID now. So yeah, I think that the thymus peptide could be a standout one in that regard.
And it would be interesting.
There are other complications, but we won't go there.
For sure. But, interestingly enough, for the thymus, we were talking about people with autoimmune issues before, maybe doing better with a synthetic versus the biologic or the oral bioregulator. Do you think that's true for the thymus as well? Like maybe they should just start with like a thymogen or something like that before jumping in?
It could be. I'm sure going back to the original trials, people with problems, they typically started them on the synthetics, and then once there was a sort of a control of the situation, they passed them back to the naturals to get longer term effects.
Interesting.
And one of the other issues of longer term effects is the less frequency of dosing.
Right. Well, so you're still pulsing it like that 10 days on, 20 days off kind of thing, but
yeah.
Okay, interesting. Okay, and then our last little clinical update really was going to be around a mutual friend, a gentleman that you were kind enough to introduce me to, and that is Dr. Bill Lawrence, who when I first met him, I would call him Dr. Bill Lawrence, and he was like, he would howl, he would laugh, and he goes, "Wow,
I really
that
sounds
really good. Maybe you could just keep calling me that."
Hey, everything sounds better in French. We know that.
Oh, well, some days. So, and this has to do really with his first cohort, right? So Dr. Lawrence is now 4 years into, I think it's 4 years, right? It's got to be 4, maybe 5 years.
It is.
His trial.
It is. Yeah. He should have got, his initial program was to do it for 3 years. But as you said, that little thing called COVID got in the way, and there were all kinds of complications, patients not being able to get blood work or come to the clinic, and well, you can imagine. So yes, you're right. It is now 4 years, and I know he's writing everything up on 39 patients, but he has actually got a significant more than 39. But those are the folks who have been in this long period. And although I'm not privy to everything yet, because I haven't even interviewed him fully myself yet, because I'm with Bill and I are planning to do that, and I'm going to make that a lead in one of our magazines, hopefully by July for the magazine.
Can't wait.
And it might come out earlier online, but and for the magazine. But what we do know, and is exciting, because if we go back to the original studies that were going on sort of 30 odd years ago, telomeres they were known about, but they weren't studied, or the mechanisms weren't there to actually do the studies. I mean, blood tests for telomeres haven't been around that long.
Absolutely.
And they certainly weren't looking at the DNA methylation, which is of course now called the Horvath clock, named after Dr. Stephen Horvath. And there were inklings. There were some mice studies, there were in vitro studies, and they showed that there was elongation of telomeres, for example, but there weren't human studies. One of the nice things, of course, that Bill's done is he's taken those patients, and he's not just focused on this, but it is a prime focus. Can we extend their average telomere length? Can we improve their DNA methylation? Now, I was with Bill once in Florida. We sat down to a meal, and he told me, a few years ago now, he told me that Stephen Horvath had come out publicly and said there is nothing that can improve human DNA methylation. Mm-hmm. He may have changed his mind since then, I'll admit that, but at that time he made a public statement along those lines. And then Bill said, well, not in my 39 patients. They've all improved.
Yeah.
And so this really now, and over 3 years, 4 years, it's continued. It wasn't a sort of a bump in the road and disappeared. It's continued. So this is really fundamental. And now we kind of drill down now into the theories of aging,
Yeah.
And it gets a bit complicated. But as we all know, there's a very strong focus today in the anti-aging world on the length of telomeres and on the, and I could remind you of a Dutch study that took place a few years ago, and on DNA methylation. So that's exciting. Now, of course, that's not where the rubber meets the road, because people say, well, yeah, all right, so I've got longer telomeres and my DNA methylation's better. So what else does it mean? And I know Bill's got a lot more to say about all kinds of other organs are being improved as well.
Well, yeah, because we should say that he's having these patients, and I joined the study last year, so I also know this firsthand. He has people using multiple bioregulators every single month. Like, you're cycling through all the bioregulators pretty much over the course of a year.
Yeah.
So
it's an intensive program, but we want to see those results. And if they really shout to us, then my goodness me, what a wake-up call. I just want to put this out there. Hopefully it will interest some people. I think it was 2015. There was a study done at the University of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And they had a bunch of centenarians, 10 or 12. One lady was a super centenarian. She was 112. It means you have to be older than 110, 112 or 130, something like that. And what they did is every week they drew a small sample of their blood, and they kept the record. And what did they look for in that blood? They looked for the length of their telomeres, and they looked for the stem cell number and the stem cell activity. That's what they monitored. Okay. And what was absolutely, I think anyway, mind-blowing was in the last 2 to 3 weeks of their life, there was a dramatic shortening of telomeres and reduction in stem cell activity.
Interesting.
Now, the billion-dollar question is that cause
or effect,
or is that consequence?
Yeah.
But that's a clue.
Yeah, that is interesting. I mean, it's whether it's cause or effect, it's the presence of, right? Yeah. And in people who, and I think this is what the other interesting point is, these people who are particularly long-lived have, and I think I read this in a study somewhere, the length of their telomeres is comparable to that of someone much younger, of a middle-aged person. So somehow there's something about whether it's these people's genetics or their lifestyle or some combination thereof, that it's allowing them to maintain longer telomeres later in life.
Absolutely. And one thing we do know about what they do is they're highly protective to the DNA strands. It's often quoted that they're on the tips of the chromosomes, and the longer they are, the more protective they are. and it's often been equated to the aglets. And what's an aglet? And they're the bits of plastic on the ends of our shoelaces.
Mhm.
And we all know that if they weren't there, what a mess our shoelaces would be, right?
Oh yeah, no,
They
and it
wouldn't be
happens all the time.
so it's a nice way to think about it.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, no, that's a great point. Thank you for sharing that, Phil. All right, well, you have, I think our last item on the agenda, unless we've forgotten something, is you have a really exciting event coming up this fall, which I know I'm super excited about, and people that I know are really excited about. It was supposed to happen at the beginning of May. Actually, it was supposed to have happened the beginning of April, just a couple of weeks ago.
April, it was. In fact, it was April the 1st, and I said it's not a joke. But April Fool's Day. But, we put it back because everyone, I'm sure, knows why. And thankfully, because it's taking place in England, it's going to be on the 30th of September to October the 2nd. And we did, because all the restrictions have been removed here in England.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need a vax passport, you don't need a mask, you don't need a social distance, you don't need a PCR test. So hopefully it will I'm hoping that people want to get back together again. We're going to miss that real interaction.
So what is it?
And
told people what it is.
Well, we've tried very hard to make this, dare I say, a high-end event. And by which I mean, we want people to come to learn, to network, and enjoy themselves. And we've put it in a wonderful 5-star hotel, which is called Luton Hoo. And it's about 20 minutes north of London, easily reached by train or road. Luton Airport is spitting distance away. And it's, as I say, it's a great hotel. You can go and look it up online, see it for yourself. And we're going to have everybody together. You're going to breakfast together, you're going to lunch together, you're going to have refreshments together, you're going to dinner together. And everyone's going to be in the same room, because the speakers are going to be there, the exhibitors are going to be there, the attendees are going to be there. We're not that kind of place where the speakers are over there and the attendees are over here and never the twain shall meet, because we know how important we've organized conferences in the past. I won't bore people with that, but we know that networking is the number one reason people come.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've got some terrific one speaker on stage at a time. You don't have to wander. There'll only be 200 people there, because you can't have an intimate environment with 2,000 people.
Correct.
So we're trying to appeal to the, dare I say it, creme de la creme, people who are really interested in this. And we've invited speakers from all over the world. Yes, Professor Cavenson intends to be there. Also, Professor Trofimova. She does the most amazing eye reversal problems with peptides. Amazing. Macular degeneration, retina pigmentosa. I mean, honestly, it's staggering. By the way, Professor Cavenson will, apart from talking about the fact that they're gene switches, he will also talk about how they've been used in the Olympic teams and in the space program. Amazing. To protect people in space. So that's going to be interesting. We've also got Bill Lawrence, of course, is coming. Yes. He's going to tell us what happened in his patients. So all going to be interested to hear that. So we have an American doctor coming, which, may help some people. And then we've also got a lovely dentist by the name Brian Halverson, and he's going to bring us up to date on the Japanese research, where they've been using peptides to, wait for it, regrow teeth.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Fascinating.
That's an amazing one. We've got a wonderful gentleman who's a surgeon, actually, from Italy. His name is Valerio De Nicola. And what he has done, his research with the University of Rome, is also mind-blowing. Basically, he's going to show how they can rebuild cartilage and avoid the need for a knee or hip replacement. Well, they've only done it in 2,000 people so far.
That is shocking. I can't believe that's not all over the papers.
I know. It's a wow factor. And there's one hospital and one clinic. That's the other thing. What we want to present is stuff that's happening now somewhere. Mm-hmm. Listen, I've got nothing against pure research and theories and all that. But what do we really all want at the end of the day? What can I do now?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're trying to be very practical in what we're doing. Yes, it could be a different part of the world. I accept that. But wouldn't you want to know that in Italy, they're regrowing people's cartilage, no major surgery, and avoiding a knee or hip replacement?
Yeah.
So his title is actually what is it? Osteoarthritis, a reversible chronic disease.
Yeah, osteoarthritis and reversible are not two words you often see in the same sentence.
Terrific, isn't it? Absolutely terrific. And we've got other speakers as well. I mean, obviously, we've got not everything is peptides. I admit that. We've got people talking about how to prevent breast cancers. We've got Marius Kriazis is coming from Cyprus. He's going to talk about carnosine. Now, carnosine is a peptide.
A dipeptide, is it not? Yeah.
Dipeptide. But there's some terrific research on it. The reversal of cataract. That's not bad. Sports, skin care. So I think we're covering people. If people are interested, they can go along to the profound-health-summit.com and they can read all about it for themselves. But I'm excited about it. I hope we can generate enough interest because I like doing them, if I'm perfectly honest. I've done them in the past. And if we can get the ball rolling on this, I wouldn't mind making it a regular event.
Oh, yeah.
So we will record it, by the way. Folks who can't get to England for whatever reason, there will be a release of the videos a month or two afterwards. I can't be sure at the moment when it will happen, but we do intend to record. But there's nothing better. Can you imagine?
Oh my God, I can't wait. I can't wait.
You'll be at the dinner table and you'll look over, oh, Professor Cavinson, I did enjoy your lecture today. Yeah, that's what it's all about.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, no, I think it's, it sounds fabulous. I was signed up for the first one. I'm signed up for the second one, and I'm just about got my plane ticket. I'm on my way. And of course you've got an early bird ticket price until June 1st. So we're going to do our best to get this podcast out in the next short while so that to give people
people get everything in the ticket. I know not the hotel room because they can choose different hotel rooms, right? And it's an amazing place. I mean, it's been in many films like Four Weddings and a Funeral and places like that. It's a quintessential English stately home with grounds, but also it's quality all the way. I hate to say this, and I'm going to mention no names, but I've been to meetings where they're getting all this great information about how we live longer, we live healthier, we live stronger, and all the rest of it, and then we have Kentucky Fried Chicken and chips. You know what I mean? It's not right, is it? It's no. So we are quality all the way.
For sure. And I think Luton Who has put together a great room rate for attendees, which is fantastic as well. So
there's no need to stay at Luton Who. Luton Airport's not far away. There are cheap hotels. You can go down there. But Luton Who is a 5-star resort, golf course, spa, gym, 1,000 acres of woodland and lakes. It's a beautiful place. And it's normally, and I'm going to talk pounds because, of course, it's the British currency. It's normally 270 a night. We've arranged a ticket of 185. That's for the room, so you can share it, and you get a really good choice of breakfast as well.
I'm in. I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it. So I'm pretty sure we've got a couple of listeners who might just be willing to hop on a plane and come over. Hop over the pond? Is that it?
Yeah, hop over the pond. Absolutely, hop over the pond, and I'm sure some of your listeners will be a lot closer. They might live in Europe or even in Britain itself. So sure. It'd be great. We're looking forward. I'm looking forward to it. It's probably going to be the highlight of my year, actually. Don't tell my wife that.
Well, and it'll be nice to meet you in person, actually. No,
I'm really looking forward to meeting all you guys. Really am, and we'll definitely have a drink together, I assure you.
Oh yeah, I can't wait. Okay, well, Phil, this has been amazing as always. Thank you so much for your time today, and to all you guys listening, the websites again. There's profound-health-summit.com if you want to join us at the end of September, beginning of October for the summit, or if you're looking to do a little
bioregulator shopping, you can go to profound-health.com. And if it's your first order, you can use longevity 15, and that'll save you 15% off your first order. And for the magazine, it's Anti-Aging Matters. And how would people get their hands on the magazine?
aging-matters.com. That's the aging dash. Our general site, which has everything, has interviews, that's antiagingsystems.com.
Right. Okay.
But if you want the magazine, you can go there and you can download them free of charge. All you need to do is give us your email address. That's all we ask.
Awesome. All right, Phil. Well, thank you very much. Did I miss anything?
No, I think we've covered a lot of ground, and it's been a delight to do it.
Right. Okay, great. So thank you so much, Phil. And of course, we'll put all those links in the show notes, folks. So if you missed them while we were talking about them, they will be there waiting for you. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, and a good day to everybody listening.